Welcome to Zen and the Art of Real Estate Investing, one of the fastest growing real estate investing podcasts in the world. What if you could learn from experienced real estate investors? Find out what got them to where they are now. Get insight into their daily habits and take these insights to inspire your own growth. Each episode, Jonathan Greene shares an in-depth look at the mindful approach to real estate investing. Jonathan is a lifelong real estate investor and the founder of Streamline, a data-driven, investor-friendly, independent real estate brokerage located in Madison, New Jersey. Whether you're looking to start from scratch, get to the next level, or just for a straightforward and honest approach to real estate investing, this is the free mentorship program you can take with you anywhere. Now, here's Jonathan.
Welcome back to another episode of Zen and the Art of Real Estate Investing. My guest today is Greg Trotter of Commercial Building Consultants. We're talking redefining the standards of commercial real estate services. Now, this is going to be a different show. This is a great show for syndicators, anyone involved in multifamily or commercial real estate, because Greg has kicked the tires on 1 billion buildings. So this is what he does: due diligence, consulting, asset management, trying to find the things that you need to be aware of if you're looking at commercial properties. Let's go. This is episode 309 of Zen and the Art of Real Estate Investing with my guest, Greg Trotter. Greg is the CEO and founder of Commercial Building Consultants. He has 40 plus years of experience in identifying risks when acquiring commercial properties. Greg is also known as a bodyguard in the industry, ensuring that clients are informed before investing their equity into commercial properties. Greg, welcome to the show.
Very happy to be here. Thanks, Jonathan.
Yeah, I'm excited to talk to you. As I was saying, the level of expertise that you have on the building inspection side is really interesting to me. I can't wait to get into it. But I know when you started, even before you started CBC, you found that there was kind of a hole in the commercial inspections area. How did you find it? What was there something that came up that you realized, wow, something's being missed here? How did that all start?
Yeah, I actually had a strong background in construction for commercial buildings strictly, and all aspects of it, utilities, ground up, all that sort of thing for 25 some years. And boy, that's a good education to have. watching the economy impact development. And I got a gut instinct of when there's stress, for example, in a project or a developer or whatever. And then finally, due to a really slow time in economic time where I was living, I needed to find a different deal to do than to do construction. That's reality. So honestly, I ended up doing what I really love to do, is analyze buildings and actually get paid for it and become a consultant. And so fortunately, I had built up enough feel for things, and I did do a little bit of management consulting just to get me so I could stand in front of a CEO and tell him what's going on. Yeah. And so I did several analysis of companies that did various things to really get me to the point where I could just talk to the CEO and have that conference after I'm all done. And let's talk about this and what you're getting into. I'm not trying to discourage anybody. I'm trying to tell you, here's the reality of what you're getting into. You never know, right, what their appetite is and what their capabilities are. I try and analyze that. But it's such a privilege to work on the behalf of a buyer that's taking a lot of risk, no doubt about it, right? And my job is just to concentrate on, what could happen and what needs to be happening the day you turn the key after closing. And that's the key date, right? And what's your plan going forward with what are we going to do with this thing during the hold period? And let's talk about the exit. And as you know, exits can move. Oh, we're going to hold this now. Right? We're going to hold for 5 years or 3 years or whatever. Or it's a forever property that we're going to hold. This is going to be our all the way to the end of our portfolio. This is going to be the one we're going to keep. And it's fascinating. And so it's really so much fun to sit down and say, here's what you got, and hold on, here we go. And
Yeah,
we
and
have that
I would
conversation.
think, I've dealt primarily in my life with residential, but I have commercial experience. But I would think it's so much more important to know the expected hold time, but then for you to analyze, well, what the potential hold time could be, because the capex that could be due between 5 years and 10 years could be dramatic, and they have to know either what they're taking on or what they're passing off, right?
Right, right. So we analyze useful life of the various systems and components, right? And so we give them an idea of what immediate needs are. And those could be code issues, structural issues, whatever it is. And that's a really important category, meaning when you turn the key, some things need to be done before you
Right.
close,
Yeah.
or within the first year, right? And so we give them categorically what those are so that they're armed well before closing with what they're getting themselves into. And we walk them through what the impact and how you're going to address this issue, costs, time, and what you need behind you if you're going to address the situation with the fire alarm or with the structural issue. And it's like being a consultant, a teacher, whatever. And my clients over the years have just loved it. So I've had many clients that have been with me for 20, 25 years, and we're family. And it's just so special to know who you're going to meet in Sacramento or Austin, Texas, or whatever. And it's a real privilege.
Yeah.
And I honor that.
It must really help them because then they have a full game plan knowing, hey, we're not missing anything, and we can figure out, as you said, what's immediate and what's not, because also there could be either tenant, either residential or commercial displacement involved. If you have to redo the roof and anything that could take clients out, they need to figure out what they're going to do, where they're going to put them, right?
Right. And they're always in a different world. Whatever their brain is at, they're kind of looking at, here, we're going to take this from a C plus to a B minus or whatever all that stuff is, right? And I try and make sure they know I don't care about cosmetics or anything like that. I'm concentrating on, the main systems of the building and the structure and the roof system and the HVAC systems. And so when they start talking about, putting strawberries on the wall or whatever they're going to do, I kind of walk out of the room and move on to my job. And as long as they know I'm focused on their back end, their wallet, their operation, and prepare them for that, then they learn that, okay, Trotter doesn't care about this now. Don't. So you were talking earlier about multifamily, for example. There's a good example, right? I always suggest they get 100% walkthrough by their team, or there are companies, a few, that do that. But I'm not going to walk 100% of 430 units, right?
Yeah.
But what I'm going to do is really analyze systems like the roof and the mechanical systems and the parking garage. There's a target-rich environment there, right?
Oh, yeah.
And on and on and on. And so I have to put together what the whole situation is by system, by category. And I always go with the intention of finding a surprise. And I'm a little disappointed, Jonathan. And very rarely do I run into no surprises.
Yeah.
But I try and push myself to, did you find it? And that really helps me, motivates me to keep going.
Yeah, and I mean, one, that gives the buyers leverage, with their deal making. But also, I really like the point that you made about the cosmetics, because the cosmetics are what most people are focused on. The prettiness of a project, and it's very hard for them not to get lost in that, and then realize, like I always make the example of just driveways, because whatever you put into any roadway is just not aesthetically pleasing. It's like you have to spend the money, but after you do, you're like, well, that wasn't worth it, because there's no ROI generally on it. But you can tell them what the potential downsides are, right?
Right. So my stuff is not. That's the problem with my area that I work in is there's not a whole lot of return on investment per se of transitioning your property from A to B or B to, B to A. That's really says a lot about my clients is they want to hear the news, good or bad. So we only work pretty much because of the type of reporting with equity involved, brain type, how they are investing a lot of money into an asset. And so that isn't for everybody, because sometimes there's bank financing or HUD or Freddie or whatever it may be. And they don't necessarily want the depth that I'm supposed to be providing with the equity level buyer that has significant in the capital stack of cash into this thing. So by accident, I got into just that real small piece of pie in commercial real estate due diligence, where there's not that many people that really want to know what I tell them. So,
but shouldn't everybody? I mean, they should.
Yes, you would think so, but no one likes to do it. And then, so I didn't realize I was really shortchanging myself to be so limited. But I found I couldn't do debt reports, Jonathan. I tried. People would hire me to do something like that, and it's like writing fiction, right? So I couldn't do that. But what happened was, ironically enough, is I also never in my business plan said, oh, I'm going to travel all around the country and North America, because who the heck's going to pay for Greg to do something that, if you look in the yellow pages in Houston, there's 15 firms like mine. So sure enough, the first job outside of Florida was Houston. And why? I mean, why would they hire me? It's because of our level, my eyes, how we inform, teach, hold them, and say, this is the deal, and give them accurate costs and impacts by various things we find. And damn, not even close. I figured I'd go from Tampa to Daytona, Jacksonville. Not even Miami entered my scope. And I obviously was so wrong. And then right around the corner here is the airport. And it's we can move pretty fast if they forget they had to schedule us. And it's a lot of directs. And it's, as far as expense, I mean, travel's really shot up costs the last few years, as you know, but
yeah,
the best cost is here because there's so much activity.
Yeah.
As far as flights. So that's how it went. And I really miscalculated how this thing was going to go. But here we are.
In a good way. That must make it more interesting, though, too, to get out of your backyard, see the quality of the builds in other areas, go to a state that you haven't been to and say, oh, wow. Okay, well, let's check mark on Missouri. Not bad on the first one.
Exactly, because every area has different challenges, jurisdictions to having this and that, seismic versus expansive soils in Texas to whatever it may be. And you become more and more familiar with, I've done more trips to California than you would ever believe. And that's fascinating to me because, what's going to happen with the seismic aspect of it. I was just in Anaheim a few weeks ago, and I walked into a parking garage, subterranean parking garage, and there was all these crack meters on the wall. Fortunately, the crack meters can tell you if there's any movement since they've been put in place or not.
Right. Yeah.
But it says there was a study done, which is interesting. And B, it can tell you, whoever put it up correctly, and everything is the horizontals, the verticals tell me there hasn't been any movement since it was put up. So, but we just keep learning and learning. And Dominican Republic, I did one up down there, the property, and there was moisture that wicks up through the soil. Obviously you're on an island. So there's groundwater's here, and here's the foundation. And water's wicking up and going up, not one, but 2 stories in these buildings. Needless to say, it's a major effort to deal with wicking moisture going up because it's capillary action, and it's literally going up the wall. A concrete wall. And you just keep learning and learning and learning. So I have plenty of surprises and more to come. Thank God.
Of course. God. Yeah. Well, I mean, just in terms of the years of the builds that you've looked at in your career, do you feel like older commercial properties were built better, or are they building better now? Because I always find like materials have changed, but in general, the things that stand the longest were usually built the best. I don't know if it's true. I want to know.
Well, I think that in fact you can find lousy construction in all different eras. But
that makes sense.
My first home was 1857, and I lived in New England, so I did a lot of historic renovation and work, all sorts of, from Strawberry Bank to commercial properties. And I worked on an old mill. It was in Portsmouth, New Hampshire. It was my first thing. Before I could drive, I was working in this historic mill in Portsmouth with my neighbor, because he bought the thing for next to nothing, and we were working on that. So what that advantage gave me, Jonathan, is it turns out that no one likes to look at old buildings. They think it's too risky, it's too whatever. And by the time I was, really well into it, I mean, I have done more historic skyscrapers than anyone probably in the business, because I'm after it. I am comfortable looking at old buildings because I think that they're actually very much well built.
Yeah.
Superior to things I look at all the time. And with the test of time, you can see if something's failed or not, and so forth. But I got to tell you, it's just each building has to stand on its own as far as structure and systems and so forth, as far as how happy I am with it, and what the new buyer of this building has to look forward to, whether it's tuck pointing the masonry or whatever, because it's an old. So we work on all that, and I got to say that. Yep, there's some real shitty new buildings and there's really shitty old buildings.
Yeah.
And some of them just give me a match, and I don't go quite that. I don't say that necessarily, but what I try and do is certainly put them in the reality of what they're getting themselves into. And this is the cost. And, if you don't have a fire alarm system in an occupied building with apartments, and it's red tagged for 3 months or 6 months, or I've run into 2 buildings this year that fire alarms absolutely weren't working. And of course, if the fire marshal walked in behind me, that would be a major, everybody get out, or we have a 24/7 fire watch, right? So I'm really surprised that sometimes you just go, what the heck? Then others I'm perfectly happy with, and so it's a lot of variety: retail, office, warehouse. Some of them are brand new, literally haven't really been used per se, like a brand new 500,000 square foot warehouse with 45 feet floor to ceiling. And you wouldn't believe the things I found, because what happens is it's brand new. So what happens in a brand new warehouse? Well, guys get on the roof to put in the air conditioning after they get the CO and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And it's disastrous. It's like, I shouldn't be seeing this, but obviously no one else has been seeing it, because there's all this damage to the roof because of the work that's been done after the roofer left, and on and on and on. But anyway, new, old, you've got to be ready to report anything, and you've got to look hard.
Yeah, absolutely. Have you ever read the book How Buildings Learn by Stuart Brand?
No.
Oh, you'll love it. I'll just say I'm sure, because it's the most extensive book on building that I've ever read, and I'm obsessed with it. I mean, I read it and then had to read it again, and you'll understand much more of it than I will. But it's really a history of how buildings are built and how they learn themselves while they're building. So it will really apply to what you do. But I see, you're basically telling me a lot of what I read in that book, which I think is really interesting, that, buildings have to be checked on, obviously, and your job is really here to provide transparency, which I think, of course, real estate would be much better if both sides said, hey, let's just know what's wrong with everything so we can come to a fair agreement. And I mean, that's really your part in it. But, if you're representing a buyer, of course, you're doing it on their behalf so they can count the cost. But you also represent sellers sometimes, where you're saying hey, this is what you have. Do you want to fix this now, or do you want to disclose it and have them fix it, right?
This week, we're doing a portfolio for a family that was started in the 60s. by an uncle, and it's entire, I don't know, it must be 25 buildings or something on it. And we're working on just that. And it's the seller that wants to know. And I think that's brilliant. Now let's talk about, look at that. The family is going to have a situation. Obviously they're coming to a point where they're going to sell the portfolio and they really want to know. And I don't know who, there's a brainiac in that family somewhere that said, let's find out now. Let's hear the bad news now. If there is, and of course, with buildings in the 60s, 70s, 80s, a myriad of different dates of construction, there's things, right? And I do know that a lot of people who find us, call us, they say, well, I was told to call you, or they somehow get through and say, look, and I really honor that, because you don't want to call unless you really want to know. And sometimes you don't want to burst they don't want their bubble burst. And so where I run into that, ironically enough, is underwriters in big groups. So the underwriters have been working really hard on Project X, right?
Yeah.
Doing all the research, this and that. And they come to a point where I get called and I'm near the end, where they're near the finish line in purchasing this property.
About to blow up their whole spreadsheet.
Yeah. And needless to say, I've lost no friends in some of the underwriting groups. They just he's going to kill the deal. That is not my purpose. And you've sort of said,
well, you don't have a stake in the game. So
right. It's not, and I'm not doing it to retrade, Jonathan, like you're thinking,
of course.
Like you mentioned. It's just arming, you just don't know what the stomach for this purchase is from the buying side. So here you go. And there's opportunities, if you look at what has to be done, that maybe can really enhance the performance of energy usage or performs other aspects like the cosmetic side or whatever. But you can't judge them. You just tell them the facts.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I agree with all of this. And I think there's people who say, well, once I know, then I'm going to have to disclose. And I always think in my head, but if you want to sell it, they're going to kick the tires. So they're going to find out. Wouldn't you rather be ahead of it, and know, hey, we're going to have to fix this. Like our heating systems are still oiled. They're from the 60s. Like we have to fix this now because now we can turn over a better product. Sure, we have to spend now, but it will increase, our potential sale price because we've handled it. But yeah, I mean, that's where I think by getting you involved on the seller side, I think that's a great idea, because then you have the opportunity to choose what you want to do and disclose what you want and deliver a better product and
exactly.
Definitely get better offers, because you could, if they wanted to, present it and say, hey, here, this is what Greg found. These are the things that we've chose to cover and we've already done it. Show them proof. That's a much easier sale to a savvy commercial buyer, than having them kick all of the tires again, which they're going to do anyway, but at least it will line up and then there's a better trust built.
There is. And maybe there's something that the seller doesn't want to deal with. Right. And that's fine too.
Yeah.
So we can develop a scope of work and even help them with that, and even who to do it or whatever. And we saw, we do a lot of forensic work, solving problems with buildings that are leaking or settling or whatever it may be. Sinking, if you will, and that's
a very Miami thing. Yeah,
exactly. And I've had several at one time, sinking buildings that we're consulting on, and that's fine. And but what I'm not going to do is make a big deal out of nothing. You don't want to do that. So they have to know that I'm there very seriously on their behalf. And we're not going to point at something stupid and say this is a disaster sort of thing.
Yeah.
We have to be able to quantify. We have to be able to justify. And we need to clearly communicate. And if it's if it's not an immediate need, then you put it in the CapEx, is that, 7 years from now, we're going to have to replace the roof or the rooftop air, the air handlers and so forth. So we project that, and we make it for a great conversation piece for everybody that's really cares about how this thing is going to go through and how it's going to perform from the day they purchase it to whatever.
Yeah, and if I'm thinking from a limited partner's perspective, which I'm a limited partner in 4 multifamily syndications, I would love to know that you were involved, because then I feel like the company is doing extra to make sure that my money's safe. Because you can do, say your expected hold time was 5 years or 7 years now, but the roof is going to be in 12 years. Well, if none of us ever see it on any of the pro forma because it's outside of the expected window, and then we can't, refi when we thought, and we have to keep rolling, I would have wanted to know that up front, that at least I know it's at 12 years, so I know it. These are part of the things that you can at least, like you said, give them the information so you have a plan in case, and that you can deliver to the next buyer as well.
Yeah, and gee, that never happens, right? You're all of a sudden can't sell the damn thing.
Right, yeah.
And of course, I see that. Why am I here is one of the things that in the back of my mind. And it's because they have to sell it because of this, that, or partner needs to get out of the syndication or whatever.
Good luck.
Yeah, you know what I mean? And you go, or there's always, that's part of the story, right? This is really, I'm a story writer, story seeker, is what the hell happened here?
Yeah.
One of the projects I worked on this year was a group that never really operated an A property. And that's a whole different deal, right? So they buy the A property at X, right? And then they don't know how to take care of their clientele. It's a certain type of thing, that take care of their amenities appropriately and don't understand it. And so by the time I show up, it's a disaster of deferred maintenance. And they're really in a hole. And that's not comfortable for anybody. But here I come, and I have to tell the buyer, okay, your deferred maintenance is this, and this. And they've overlooked a lot of different things, and we got to get caught up. And so be prepared, and the number's large. It's millions. And so I always do kind of chuckle when I finally figure out why something is happening. It could be an assumable portion of the loan. That sort of thing was recently it. On and on and on. And I just trying to put the story together, Jonathan. The story on this one is, here you go.
Hey, it's Jonathan. I hope you're enjoying this episode with Greg Trotter. I bet it's enlightening. It's definitely shining a light on a lot for me. But if you want to get in touch with Greg and his team to find out what they can do for you, go to thecbcteam.com. It's pretty simple. You'll go right to the website. You can get in touch with them and see if they're a match for your assistance that I know you need with due diligence and commercial asset protection. Let's get back to Greg. But that's exactly the reason why they should get you involved in the beginning. So you don't have to come and forensically figure out the story of all the things that they missed because they just did pick up the phone book and use somebody who doesn't have a full construction background. It's a different world. I mean, I'm used to just your regular home inspections, and those can go awry really fast. But to think about all the issues with large scale apartment buildings, and 20-story buildings, or, 3-level garden units, but there's 100 all attached together, the difference is that all of the apartments are touching each other. And I always think of that when I look at row houses in like Philadelphia or Jersey City. Someone will say like, well, there's a structural issue. I'm like, well, you can't fix that because it will affect all of your neighbors. Like, you're just going with it. It's just, and this is apartments, 101. So it must be interesting to see, what you do on this side of the building, as you're saying with roofs and stuff, could affect the other side of the building, which creates another problem.
Right. So I've had the privilege of doing 70-story building. It was the tallest building in Florida for 5 years.
Oh, wow.
I've had to do college campuses. And one of the interesting issues with the college campus was there was 2 campuses. There was a sister campus. And I found out that the key system was the same for both campuses. So now the guy over on campus A, which is, 2 hours away, has got this magic key that he can open up all the buildings that I'm in campus A, B, it's whatever. And I go, so we need to rekey the entire the property.
Yeah.
You don't think that's a big deal? Because usually if it's the grandfather, a key system can get very sophisticated.
Yeah.
Certain keys for certain level of people who need to get access, right? And so I had to inform the buyer. I said, and there's one more thing, and you're going to be a little surprised this is immediate need, but its immediate need is that we can't have the guy who's got the grandfather key over on campus A and all the other people that do come over to this campus and come and go or leak it. So that's their problem, and certainly no one's ever going to think about that. But I do. I have to, because keys and rekeying and relocking systems in institutional property like a campus, those are very expensive.
Yeah.
So I come up with some different stuff, Jonathan.
Yeah, but those are savior type of things. Yeah, I wanted to get some more things like that. What are some things that you think that a lot of people might overlook or miss in due diligence that you've seen come up time and time again, depending on the year of the build, but just kind of over your career, what are the things that pop up more often than not that people maybe wouldn't expect?
Well, you got to start at the top, the roof.
Yeah.
They could be the roof could have been put on yesterday and it could be totally screwed up versus, it's just near the end of expected life. And, I do provide, I'm do roof restoration consulting, working on malls and things like that, where they really can't afford to just re-roof something because it's millions of square feet or half a million, 2 million square feet. So you need to extend the life of that roof. And so I better know my stuff so that, hey, it's not practical to do this, but we could do this and approach it. So roofing is key. There's systems on properties like lift stations, sanitary lift stations. Those are very sophisticated systems. And if they're ignored, not taken care of, well, guess what happens when the lift station doesn't work?
Yeah, big problem.
It backs up into the buildings and you laugh, right?
Yeah.
It's because, and sometimes, let's pretend that you have a lift station and it doesn't have any power. All of a sudden, they lose power for sometimes, in case I'm in Florida, right, a week or two. We need emergency, power generator to take care of at least some way to handle this issue, because oftentimes I was in property in South Carolina where they didn't have power for a week and a half. So what happened to the first floor units, Jonathan?
Yeah, boy, probably didn't smell great. Yeah.
Yeah, it just came up.
Flooded, yeah.
It flooded with the bad stuff, with the dirty water, if you will. Yeah. So it's sophisticated systems that they don't know how to deal with. In my world, if it's there and it doesn't work, for example, emergency generator, I'm going to make sure that damn thing works. And then it's an immediate need, especially when it's life safety, right? So you look at your life safety systems, you look at your structure, your foundations. And, one of the things I run into a lot, as far as you laugh, but drainage is a lot of my immediate needs, because erosion can cause all sorts of problems with properties as far as foundations and on and on.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering what the heck these civil engineers are doing, because they actually design them, or they somehow get to a point when I get there that they're just causing all sorts of problems. So site drainage is actually a very, very common thing that I write up all the time, because it's, I was in West Virginia. What a beautiful state that is, but it's got topography.
Yeah.
So this is a beautiful property, but what happened is like the property's like this. And on the back of the property was a basketball court, a pool, various amenities. Well, guess what? The slope is so steep on the back that all of a sudden the basketball court is starting to go south, right?
Yeah.
And the retaining wall and undermining of foundations was such that, timeout, we need to concentrate on stopping this problem here.
Yeah.
Because you can keep ignoring it. And of course you can ignore it, right? You can ignore that things are getting undermined. So your foundation, your slabs, whatever, are getting undermined. But after a while, it's going to get very expensive. So ironically enough, my answer to you that really would shock you is site drainage is really something I run into as an issue to the life of the property going forward that no one would ever think of. Boy, I'm looking closely at that, every bit of foundations, slabs, whatever. And holy moly,
Yeah, I
there it
mean,
is.
from single family to large scale, I don't think people take grading into account enough in the beginning. I'll tell you a quick story because it's right up exactly what you're saying. I owned a commercial fiveplex mini mall in Cross River, New York for years. My dad owned it, then passed it on to me. And one year, this is 20, 25 years ago, the town came to us and it backed up against the wetlands. So, of course, it was protected land. We had to be careful. And the runoff from the deli would roll back. And so they came one time and they're like, you need to regrade this. Like, it's an immediate concern. And we're like, oh my God, this can't be a big deal. It was $100,000. This is, again, 20 years ago. And then they came back 3 years later and told us we had to do it again. The wetland was definitely a part of it, but I think that we didn't really understand grading, and who we used didn't, because obviously if we have to do it again 3 years later, we've done something wrong. But I can tell you, on every single residential home inspection I've ever done, which is probably like hundreds and hundreds, grading is always an issue. It always comes up because it's always changing. The ground is changing, it's moving, there's water issues. And now that it's raining harder, these type of things that we're talking about, drainage, is even more important. I mean, water is going to be a main concern, especially in areas like Florida where it rains so much and where you have, tropical storms that come in all the time.
Yeah. We just had a recent storm, 19 inches in Mount Dora.
Wow. Yeah.
Wiped out streets, everything. It can be a mess. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you think that the increase in I would call them weather anomalies is making that part even more important, because there's more stuff to look at when now, like, I would just think of like Asheville from last year, because Asheville, I was under contract on an A-frame there because I was like, oh, this is weather resistant. Nothing ever happens here. And then literally I'm under contract and that whole happened. I got out of the deal. But yeah, we're seeing more weather disasters. That's something that you have to look at, all these things that you're already looking at with maybe a different lens, because, like you said, the water intake from rain is just so high, so quick lately.
And then what happens, right? So to speak of that storm, the two hurricanes back to back that impacted Asheville, for example, guess who they call? They call me right after there's a storm like that. And and I go and inspect and guide. And so I keep learning every day, and that is also a privilege and honor for me to get called into a natural disaster or whatever. Starting with Andrew. I mean, Andrew was so difficult to even deal with because we didn't have cell phones then.
I remember it well.
Yeah. So
I was
of course
there.
You do. You were there. So trying to imagine me trying to figure out how to get to A to B when the street signs are gone. Lights are dangling and wires are dangling and rabid dogs and on and on. And it was really kind of hard to find a hotel to stay in.
Yeah.
And I did find one, but it was something like out of a movie or something. Like there's sheets across the windows, and the thing had been hit with the hurricane, yet it was up and running, and I was glad to find a place. But, you just get better and better. We've earned these gray hairs, and by God, we use them. And it's like, I wonder what I'm going to learn this week. And every week I do.
Yeah, it's funny that you mentioned Andrew, though. I was just starting as a prosecutor in Broward County, one county away from Dade at the time. And after Andrew happened, of course, everyone was rebuilding, but the glut of unlicensed contractor cases went on for years. Because people needed repairs. There weren't enough people. So, of course, people were doing unlicensed repairs, but it also became a typical Florida thing, quick money. Oh, where'd my money go? That,
storm chasers.
Yeah. I mean, Florida it's the most transient state. So, and in terms of your tenants there, maybe people buy buildings thinking, multifamily buildings in Florida thinking, hey, this will be easy. But Florida is a very transient state. People come and go a lot. So if you don't, as you were saying before with that A-class property, wherever that was, I think that some operators don't know what they're getting into. And then, like you said, if you get behind in the operations and maintenance, you're really going to be in trouble because your projections are already off. That's why you're not doing the maintenance, but you're just digging yourself a bigger hole, which in turn makes it much harder to sell and at a lower price point.
It's so sad. All of a sudden the fountains don't work. And then this is it. And then the golf thing and on and on and on. And not that I care about amenities per se, but of course I do. The pool. and various items like that. One of the interesting things I keep running into this year in particular is how to handle trash. Yeah, it just, so we have specific things we got to talk about in a PCA. Signage, make sure we can find the damn property when we're at 3:00 in the morning.
Yeah.
We got to talk about trash, what's happening with the trash system and how it works. And I ran into one property this year that they had their own garbage truck. Now, come on, who would have figured that? I had one where they put dumpsters for trash on 4 stories in the parking garage, and then they had to ferry the dumpsters, they were on wheels, out to the compactor, which is it felt like it was a mile away. I swear, you have to analyze every aspect of the operation of any property and see if it makes sense. And I said, this does not work. This doesn't make sense. It must be a guy's using 2.5 days of the week.
Right.
Moving dumpsters around.
Yeah.
Can you believe that?
But that's interesting, though, because someone would think oh, garbage, what's the big deal? The operational use of the time that person can be doing something else on maintenance is huge.
So disruptive.
It's a great point. Yeah.
Imagine you're getting out of the parking garage and there's this dumpster train.
Yeah.
Going by. Hey, I need to get out of here. I do have too much fun. I admit it. I should be paying them.
Yeah, but again, I think that goes to the kind of cosmetic aesthetic vision to what's in the back end. And sometimes people are only looking at the best case scenario, which I talk to syndicators all the time. We never want to see the best case scenario. Now I'm going to say, you need to call Greg. We'd like to know, hey, what's the middle case scenario? Again, as an LP, I want to know. And if I'm buying apartments, which I don't want to, that's why I invest as a limited partner, I would really want to kick the tires. I love kicking the tires on a house. I like to know what's wrong. And I think that just makes it more fair overall.
Yep. No one wants to get saddled with a real bad property, and they're out there. And I'm as surprised as anybody sometimes when I pull up and I look at what I'm going to be looking at today or examining, and I can't assume, but I sort of think about it, and then in I go, and I come out and say, "No, I wasn't even close." It's you can't just assume.
Yeah. I wanted to get your take on structural issues because obviously after that one building fell in Miami, insurance costs have gone up so much across the board because, of course, insurance carriers, everybody's worried about it, rightfully so. Is there a structural aspect of, I guess, different types of large-scale commercial buildings that concern you or that you're looking for first? Because, of course, we talked already about the grading and drainage, which has a big effect on the foundation. But I'm just wondering if state-wise, there's anything where you're going and you can tell right away, I think there's going to be a structural issue here, other than obviously slanting of the property.
Right. Well, let's look at the obvious. If the property is near the ocean.
Yeah.
And it's a high rise, what do we have in the concrete? Embedded in the concrete is rebar. And we have salt so there's a lot of salt in the air and in the water and sand and so forth. So you pretty much can guarantee if it's a 30-year-old property, and sometimes newer, there very well could be spalling of concrete that, we're talking jackhammers and taking out. It's a really horrendous, expensive, no return on investment situation. So spalling is really one of those things you've got to look for. And also, if you have salt-laden air, right, then that lowers your estimated useful life of equipment. And then you start looking on and on and on. But I've had the privilege of working a lot in Miami. In some cases, I've just stayed on a project for months and months and months because somebody left it and I had to finish it, sort of thing. And all I can tell you is that it's really sad, but you have these storms, and we have risk assessment analysis as to on any property you send me to. We have 2 things that are really cool. Build facts. We use Build Facts, which is one of the greatest inventions ever. That gives me the permit history on the property.
Oh,
isn't that
awesome?
Fun? Yeah. So we have all the history, and sometimes it's pretty long. And then,
well, it's better if it's longer than shorter.
Exactly. And then And then watch this. That now we have the ability to know how many times this island has been hit by hurricanes, to what degree, and what you really need to do. And sometimes I found where we have to raise the walls around the perimeter of the property 4 feet because of the ocean. When we have surges, we have to consider that. So those sorts of things have to be analyzed as a basis for going forward. Because if you're on an island, Jonathan, and it rains, where does that water go when it goes into the catch basin? Let me tell you where it goes. It goes to the ocean.
Right.
Now, let's have a surge situation happen, like South Beach. And you know what happens when it's really amazing rainstorm with wind and surge? Is the water just immediately goes above the top of your car.
Yeah.
And it can happen at hours. So you have to consider all those things. When you send me to a property, I have to picture all this happening and 19 inches of rain. What is going to happen to this property? And I put in my reports things that say, could be pretty tragic here.
Yeah.
Basically saying, are you crazy? But I will say that. But they buy the damn thing. So I'm saying, no, your seawalls need to be built up. Substantial seawalls. I have built seawalls and then and boardwalks to the tune of millions of dollars. And the next storm comes by and just I've done that. So I think that's really part of what I bring is I've seen a lot of things that have failed.
Yeah.
And I've been involved with it or I've been called into explosion or failure or whatever it may be for insurance claim or something. And I think you need to have a lot of learning events to do what I do. You just have to know that, geez, have we seen this before? What could happen here? So I'm not blurry-eyed. I'm really clear-eyed as to what the potentials are on every property, whether it's seismic or wind or surge or hurricanes. It's interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I always say that part of this podcast, what it delivers is the ability for people not to step in all the potholes that all of me and all of the guests have stepped in. But the reason to call you is because a first-time building owner, even if they're good at the operations, they may not know that storm surge is a lot different than it was 11 years ago when the property was built. And now we need to assess this. And I think this is going to be a continuing thing for apartments. We're having, of course, we have a housing shortage. So maybe in some areas, they may choose to relax the constraints so they can get more units built, but then that could create more problems long term. It's a tough time to figure out with building because the regulations are so high that it makes it harder and longer to get things done. But we don't know what the ramifications will be if they're laxed. We'll see in California, of course, because that's one of the, with the fires, that's a whole nother issue.
This is where, I think one of the things that we're seeing, of course, is that with all the issues you're talking about, the shortages and getting construction workers and so on and so forth, like Cardinal Home modular systems, I've actually been in the plants where they've worked on that. I think, they're so well built because it's not raining in there. It's very accurate, and they're building buildings that are, houses that are going to be on the back of trailers and so forth. And I think that we're going to see a lot more of that so that it's really strong. It's got good quality assurance, quality control. Everybody's watching the fasteners, the electrical, and so forth. And so I think we're going to see a revolution where a lot of this stuff is now. I'm not sure if you're seeing that in New Jersey, but modular is going to be the way to go.
Yeah, I've seen it as much as possible. We're the densest state, so there's less room to make things happen.
You're the densest state?
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah.
In other words, the per person per mile, more people per
I think
acre.
For people and structures. Yeah. I could be wrong, but I've been saying it for a while, so I heard it somewhere.
I like it.
We're small, but there's a lot of stuff here.
And it is the Garden State. Still, that soil is amazing.
Yeah. I love it here. I mean,
Yeah.
there's just not as many places to build. So when you look for builders, they're not, especially for commercial, there's just not a lot of options in terms of large scale commercial. They seem to find them all over, but they're going to be closer to highways, and it's interesting. But that's again, like that's why it must be so fun for you to go into different areas and see what they've had to do on the commercial end to get stuff done, and if they've done it right.
Yeah, I'm a lucky guy.
Yeah.
I don't deny it. I really am. And it's hard because of the joy that I get out of it. It's hard to let go.
Yeah. Well, is the best place for anybody who wants to get in touch with you guys at thecbcteam.com, and CBC standing for Commercial Building Consultants?
That's the best way to get a hold of us. You can find us on the internet, and we're here in Orlando, but we serve the entire United States. We've worked in a couple of provinces in Canada, and we've worked in the Caribbean. And we have a lot of foreign investors investing in the United States, and we're kind of sensitive to that because I think they're under served. So we work with companies and investors from other countries that are investing in the United States, and that's quite an honor for us. And we're very careful to take care of them because they deserve to be well taken care of.
Yeah.
So
absolutely.
Yep. That's us, and we can be in your town tomorrow.
And so who should give you a call, though? Is there a scale of building or commercial project that's too small in terms of like who's your ideal client?
Wow. I think every client is an ideal client to me because they're buying a building and they've decided to use us. But our clients, some of our clients are buying 12 or 15 properties a year. Then others, I think that people who are grown up, realize there's a risk, and appreciate what we do is my ideal client. And I enjoy the repartee. For example, what we're doing here, Jonathan, of just exchanging ideas and what do you think of this and that. And obviously you can sort of see me in this situation where I sit down with you after the fact or whenever, and it could be a conference room of people in the firm that's doing this acquisition. And I want them to be smart. I want them to challenge me, and I want to make sure that I get them so they're fully understanding of what they're getting themselves into.
Yeah.
And that is the thrill of being a teacher and a consultant. And it turns me on when we have people that are really paying attention and asking the right questions about what do we got here?
Yeah. I think the best case scenario is for you probably is you give them all the information. They don't flinch. They decide which things are most important. They take your advice and they make sound decisions for the future of the building and the residents or the tenants, if it's retail or commercial businesses that are in the best interest of everybody, so that the investment becomes more sound later, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Exactly. What's interesting is sometimes, eventually, after say we have this PCA property condition assessment event, and the potential buyer walks, guess what happens? They eventually end around coming back because the truth is the truth.
At least they know it.
Yeah.
What do they want you go do it again on another building?
Right. I love that. Is it? Yeah. We ended up going back and buying that, but it got to the reality of what we were talking about fundamentally, that the seller was over here and not realistic about things. And then they come down to, oh, yeah, turns out you're right.
But that's leverage. That's why it's great.
It is.
Yeah.
But I don't want you to think of me as the guy this discount coupon guy. I want you to think of me as the proper hold your hand and walk along beside you and keep you informed. I'm not a coupon.
Yeah, I don't mean the put the arm behind the back leverage, but we've presented you with what we see out there, and this is why we need to move the cost down, and then they don't. But then they have to think as a seller, okay, well, the next person may not hire Greg, but they may find out the same stuff. We know about it, so why don't we try to figure it out now while we have a buyer who loves the property? I mean, and it's not like you put it back on the market and there's 30 buyers again. Savvy buyers are all coming up with the same stuff. Well, this has been awesome. I really appreciate it. It's a unique show. We're at episode over 300, 309 now, and we haven't really gone in this depth on the construction. So thanks so much for your expertise. I really appreciate it.
Anytime, and we can talk about a lot of different things if you really want to go back to this again.
Yeah, absolutely.
Environmental-wise or otherwise. It's really a joy.
Yeah.
Thank you, Jonathan.
Yeah, I really appreciate it. All right, that was Greg Trotter. He's the CEO and founder of Commercial Building Consultants. Again, you can find him at thecbcteam.com. I'm Jonathan Greene. We'll see you next episode. Thanks for sticking around to the end so you can get a preview of who's coming up on the next episode of Zen and the Art of Real Estate Investing. And it's Bob Fraser of Aspen Funds, macro-driven alternative investments, private funds for accredited investors, but we talk about everything. We talk about how Bob started with his own multifamily, which he hated, and how he ended up in this large-scale alternative real estate and other investments. And we go through a lot of different asset classes. We're going to talk industrial. We talk about a lot of commercial assets. I think you're going to enjoy it. Next episode. See you then.